Hechal Boker Or Masechet Kiddushin Daf Ein Gimel Amud Aleph 73a1 says the Gemara. You remember we were just speaking about, right, the different types of the times, how many times it said kahal, and therefore the machloket whether be'emet ger is allowed to come and get married, right, to a mamzeret or no. That was the entire machloket that we had over here. So now we are a few lines down where it says echad ger ve'echad eved meshuchrar ve'chalal mutarim bekohenet. So we said if you go down, it's right after there's a little tiny bet. So it says over there echad ger, 2 lines underneath the bet. So 2 lines underneath that little tiny bet, you have it there. Echad ger, right? It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, probably 12 lines down. Okay? 12, 13 lines down. So it says like this. Echad ger, ve'echad eve meshuchrar, ve'chalal mutarim bekohenet. Doesn't matter whether it's going to be a ger, an eve meshuchrar, or a chalal, they're allowed to get married, right? Thank you. With a kohenet. Okay, now remember why? Because we said that the kohenet is not obligated in any of the mitzvot of the Kiddusha. It's only a Kohen. Right? For example, Kohenet, can she go to a cemetery? Yes. Kohenet, can she get married to a Halal? Yes. Can she get married to a Evim Shukrar? Yes. To a Ger? Yes. Because it's not a problem in her. It's a problem in a Kohen. A Kohen has to sanctify himself, but the Kohenet is allowed to get married to all these different people. Okay? Masayeh le Rav. So this is actually in accordance to Rav. Why? He comes and he says like this. He says, Masayeh le Rav, the Amar of Yudam Rav. It says of Yudam name of Rav. Lo huzaru kesherot linasel psulim. There's no obligation. I mean, they weren't warned, the kesherot, to come to get married for the psulim. And therefore, that's why a kohenet is allowed to get married, whether it's going to be a ger, whether it's going to be an evim meshuchrar, or a halal. Rasha bizera b'mechuza. So the bizera came and he made it. The Rasha mechuza ger mutar b'mamzeret. A ger is allowed to get married to mamzeret, like Rabbi Yosef. Like mu kule alma betrogayu. So everyone came and they wanted to start throwing their etrogim at him, to like stone him with the etrogim, right? Why? Because they didn't want. Why now a ger could come and get married to a mamzeret? They didn't want. Yeah. Now it says over here there was a lot of gerim. So since there was a lot of gerim in mechuza, if you're going to go to a place where there's a lot of gerim, and now you're going to say, listen, all these gerim are allowed to get married to a mamzeret, it's a little bit, you're asking for trouble. But he said the truth though. So Amar Rava comes and he says, he says, why? Are you going to go to a place where there's a whole bunch of gerim, and now you're going to start being dureshes? So Darish Rava b'mechuza ger mutar bekohenet. So Rava came and he said, right, that a ger is allowed to come and get married to a kohenet. Tanu b'shirai. So they came and they put him up with a big day meshi, and they, he said something that they like. So they came and they gave him all these clothing of, like of silk and this and that, and they were carrying him around. Why? Because he said that a ger is allowed to get into a kohenet. But then he went and he told them, ger is mutar b'mamzeret, that a ger is going to be mutar with a mamzeret. So he comes and he says, Elmaleh, they told him, you lost everything that you did until now. Amalehu, he comes and he says, right, the tava lechu avdi lechu, ibai mehacha, right, nasiv, ibai mehacha, nasiv. What does that mean? He comes and he says, right, he comes and he says like this. He says, whatever that you did at the beginning, right, you lost. Why did you lose whatever you did at the beginning? He says, because at the beginning you went and you said that a ger is allowed to get married to a kohenet. Right? So now, everybody is like, you got a lot of, of ma'ala. They're going to give him a lot of ma'ala. All of a sudden, they come and they told him, right? Because there were a lot of gerim, so they were very happy. Exactly. So So they were all happy. All of a sudden, what happens? Is he comes and he says that also a ger is allowed to get married to a mamzeret. So they come and they said, you lost all the kavod that we gave you. Yeah? But again, you have to say the truth. What can I do? Amar lehu, so he said, Tava lechu avdi lechu, ibai mehacha nasiv. He said, no, you guys didn't understand. You guys have the best of both worlds. Right? He was a good politician. Yeah, he knew how to play the game. He said, no, you don't understand. You're the best of both worlds. If you guys want, you get married to a kohenet. And you guys want, get married to a mamzeret. I didn't say that it's only permitted on mamzeret. So I said, so whatever is better for you. Yeah, he know how to sell. Yeah, he was very, very good. The hilchata. So what is halacha? Ger is mutar bekohenet, and mutar bemamzeret. The halacha is it's mutar in both. Yeah, mutar bekohenet, why lo zuruk shalin sepsulim. The mutar bemamzeret, like the shita of Rabbi Yosef. Yeah, everyone understood? Fine. The two dots in Mishnah. Eluhen shetuki. What's a shtuki? Remember, a shtuki is kol shemakir et imo v'eno makir et aviv. He knows the mother but not the father. Meaning he's going to come and say, papa, and they're going to just, shh. Why shh? They don't even know if that's a father. So they're going to quiet him down. Okay? Fine. Shtuk says, right, exactly, shtuk. Yeah? So he comes and he says this. Amar Rava. Rava says, Devar Torah shtuki kasher. Mitzad halacha, the shtuki is going to be kasher to get married with anything. My time, what's the reason? Rov ksherim itzah. Because the majority of the world are kasher to her. V'mi'ut psulin itzah. And you only have the minority which are going to be pasul to her. Okay? Now, if he comes to her, called the parish meruba parish. Whoever comes from the rov, comes from the rov. And therefore it should be permitted. So Maya Marta, maybe you're gonna, what are you gonna say? Dilma Azlahi legabayu, maybe she went to him. Havale kavua, he's going to be kavua. But Torah Amra, so the Torah says, Lo yavo mamzer, mamzer vadai would lo yavo, mamzer safek yavo. It says only a mamzer vadai cannot come into the kahal. This mamzer safek, because it's a shtuki, he can come, right? So vadai would lo yavo habekal, right? Safek yavo. So therefore you could say that there's no problem. So therefore that's why mina Torah, it's a mutar for a mamzer to get married to a shtukit, right? And a shtuki, right? There's a doubt maybe he's a mamzer or not. He's mutar to get married to a Israelite. There's no problem. Okay? So therefore the question is, so why did they say the shtuki is pasul? So he says, because maybe he's going to get married to his sister from the father. Meaning, since we don't know who the father is, maybe he's going to come and he's going to get married to his sister, right? And it's 100% a sister. He just finds a woman on the street. It's his sister. Yeah? Fine. Ela me'ata. Huh? Vadai. Yeah, you have to be careful. 100%. Right? Especially nowadays with the artificial insemination, right? And all these things, right? They have to be careful with this a lot. No, לא קשור. לא, בגלל זה הוא פסול. לא, אז הוא לא מה? לא, תלוי לפי. אז איך הוא הולך לעיר אחרת ששם הסיכוי פחות? No, the Mishnah already said, we're going to mention it now. So he says, אלא מעטה, fine. So shtuki v'shtukit lo yisa. So one second. So obviously a shtuki cannot get married to a shtukit. Why? Shema yisa achoto me'aviv. Because maybe he's going to get married to the sister from the father. But kol kihani mizane v'azi. He says, what? You're going to say that these people are just going to mizanim and they just continue having relations? He says, what? All of them are going to be from the same guy? Obviously not. So he says, no, you're right. Bat shtukit lo yisa. Which means the bat shtukit, the person should not get married. Shema yisa achoto me'aviv. Because maybe he's going to get married to the sister from the father. Ela barada lo shchicha. It's not common. Which means at the end of the day, it's not common. So it's not common. So therefore, what's the isur? Meaning, what are the chances that a person is going to come and get married to a sister? What are the chances? So he come, yeah, but we go after rov. What? מה זה בלי ידיעתו? שאלת מה הסיכוי? Yeah, obviously בלי ידיעתו. אנחנו לא מדברים על... So that's what he says over here, אלא מעלה עשו ביוחסין. He says, what does that mean? ביוחסין, we don't want to go after rov. We don't want to go after the majority. Technically speaking, mitzad other things, you go after the majority. Here, we don't have to go to the majority. Right? Some people, they actually say the same thing to do with, everything that's kasher. Somebody wants to get into it. No, they're going to get married to this family. He says, did you actually look into the family? No, the majority of people are kosher. What do you mean the majority of people are kosher? There's yuchasim. Did you check in? Did you make sure that there's no questionable conversions? Did you make sure that there's no mamzerim? Did you make sure that there's no this, no that? That's what I'm saying, yeah.
You check that before?
You check. Of course.
How do you check?
Of course, you check before. Amar Rava. So Rava comes and he says, right, Dvar Torah, and a Sufi is also kasher. Remember, in a Sufi is all of a sudden, they find the baby right in front of you. They don't know who the father is or who the mother is. Sometimes it happens. They come, they leave them by foster homes, or they just leave them in the middle of a public place, and they're looking, they're like, they don't know who the father, who the mother, they're just abandoned children. And that's an asufi, right? Right? That you gather them. My time, what's the reasoning? Eshet ish beba'ala tola. Remember that in Eshet ish, even if it is that she does have a mamzer, she always says that it goes up to the husband. So ma'ika, so then what is there then? Miyut arusot, you have the minority of women that they're arusot, that therefore they're like an Eshet ish. The miyut shalach, and also a miyut that their husbands went to Medinat Hayam, right? But since you do have pnuyot, the pnuyot also, they sometimes fool around and they have children, right? And because of that, they just put them on the street. And you also have mechamat ravon, which means because of poverty, that they just put them on the streets. Meaning like this. What are we trying to understand? An asufi, mitzad halacha, technically speaking, he should be kosher to be coming into the kal. Why? We go after the majority, right? Minority are arusot. Arusot means that she's engaged, but not a full marriage. And they fooled around and they had children, and therefore you have that, as if say this child that they're going to put in the street. Minority, their husbands went to Medinat Hayam, and all of a sudden she's pregnant, and you're like, excuse me, how are you pregnant? I'm saying your husband was away for the past half a year or whatever it is. How are you 3 months pregnant? Like what's going on, right? Then you have pnuya. A pnuya, the majority of people are kosher. Pnuya, there's no mamzerut from a pnuya, right? Unless you hold of the shita that an eved and a goy that comes on a bat Yisrael, the child is a mamzer, right? Which is Rabbi Kiva, but we don't hold of that. So therefore, there's no mamzerut here. So she also, sometimes she fools around. She has a child, and now she's not going to take the child. So therefore, she just put them on the street. Or you have ravon. What is ravon? Ravon is that some people, everything's normal. They just don't have the money. They have so much poverty. So what do? They just put the child in the middle of the street because they can't. But the child is 100% kosher. So because of that, it's palga or palga. You have half and half. Meaning, half mitzadi sur, that there probably is mamzerut, whether it's because the husband went to Medinat Hayam or because she's an arusa. But then on the other side, you have the pnuyot, and you have the how do you call the other one? The pnuyot and the ravon, and the ones that because of hunger. So the Torah says, ממזר ודאי הוא דלא יבוא. הממזר ספק יבוא. בקל ודאי הוא דלא יבוא, בקל ספק יבוא. So it comes out that basically they're allowed to. So therefore, so why did they say that a Sufi is going to be pasul? Shemiyisa choto me'aviv. The same thing, because maybe he's going to get married to the choto me'aviv. So says the Gemara, okay, fine. Ela me'ata, so then we're going to come and we're going to ask a question. A Sufi lo yisa. Don't get married to an Asufit. Shemiyisa choto me'aviv. No, because maybe he could get married to whether it's the sister, whether it's from the father or the mother. Like the Gemara says, Kol hani shadi v'azni. All the banim, right, that they had this, like that they threw away, whatever it is, we say, Kol avladot ne'esafim me'ashuk, nodu me'em echatwa, they all come from the same mother. Meaning it doesn't make sense that the mother is going to do it twice. That she had a child, she throws him in the street, and then she's going to have another child and throw him in the street. And then it's like, they got married to somebody which is the same father, same mother. Or the same mother. You mean like, well, the same mother and she's still doing this? It doesn't make sense. But Bata Sufi lo yisa, a person should not get married to the daughter of an Asufit, right? Why? Shemi yisa choto, because maybe he's going to get married to a choto. Ela lo shchiach, but it's not common. It's meaning it's not common this case scenario. So anything which is not common, we don't make a decree. But the same answer, ela ma'ala esu yuchasim, the meaning ma'ala yuchasim, which means even though mitzad halacha technically would have been permitted, but because they wanted to make a ma'ala yuchasim, so therefore it's going to be prohibited that they're not going to accept an Asufi to get married to whoever they want.
We just say we don't take a chance in our lives. It doesn't. We don't go according to majority.
That's why. But mitzad the Torah, right? The Torah says levo mamzer. It's a mamzer vadai. If it's going to be mamzer safek, this is a mamzer safek. I don't know if it's a mamzer.
Okay, take a chance.
So therefore, but one more time, the Torah only said levo mamzer.
Understand, but he's a safek, 50% yes.
And therefore,
so how do you take a chance?
Because we said that the Torah only said that a mamzer vadai.
I understand it.
And therefore,
only circles.
So I'm not understanding you.
Okay.
The Torah tells you.
The Torah tells you. No, but I'm not understanding. Yeah.
Understand it. We have a rule the Torah told us. In everything else, not everything else. In some things, you go according to majority, you close your eyes. On some things, alayot, you cannot take a chance, even one chance.
I apologize. You're incorrect. That's not the Torah. That's the Chachamim. That's not the Torah. I don't understand where you're going.
Okay.
So the Chachamim are going against the Torah. They're making a ma'ala. So therefore, there's no question. I don't understand what you're asking. One more time. Mitzad the Torah. If there's no Chachamim, mutar. Lama afilu misafek. Yeshcha 50-50, doesn't matter. It's mamzer badai. חכמים באו ועשו, מעלה עשו ביוחסים. אבל זה מה שאני ניסיתי להגיד מההתחלה. אמר רבא בר אבונה, says רבא בר אבונה, מצאו מהול. What happens if you find that the child has a brit milah? Ayin gimel mubet, 73b. En bo mishum sufi. There's no sufi. Right? Why? He says, because if she would have thrown him because he's a mamzer, so she wouldn't have done brit milah. Meaning that it was probably because of the avon, and therefore that's why she got rid of him. Meaning, if he already has a brit milah, if a child has a mamzer, if a mother has a mamzer, exactly. If a mother has a mamzer, she's going to get rid of him very quickly. Now, if she's already doing a brit milah to him, meaning that this was a kosher child. The only thing is, because of Ravon, exactly. So she had to get rid of him, right? The shalte hadme, if his limbs are proper, meaning that they're like in tukan, yashar, they're right. So embo mishum asufi, the same thing. Why? Because if it was pasur, they would have just got rid of him. Shayef mishcha, if he's mashuach b'shemen, umla kuchla, and was full of like things to beautify him, or remi chumni, or shayuro kishas asabim kshurimbo, or tali pitka, or he had a kamiya, utle kamiya, right? Or also he's wearing this kamiya, talui betzavaro, right? He says over here, embo mishum asufi. There's no asufi. Why? Because basically what happens is that really be'emet, it shows that the mother had mercy on him, and really be'emet, she loved him and she really wanted him, and it's just because of circumstances that she had, and therefore he's going to be mutar to get married to a bat Yisrael kshera. Tali bidikle, if he's hanging on a palm tree, imatya lechaya, if a chaya ra'a could take him, there's a problem with a sufi. But if not, there's no sufi. Meaning, if the child was hanging down, that basically low enough that any wild animal could just come and get him, so for obviously it's an asufi. Why? It was going to be probably devoured by an animal, whatever it is. But if it's going to be high up, so then no. Zarta, which is an etz of uzradin, v'smicha lemata, which is samuch la'ir, right? Yesh bo mishum asufi. Why? Because there's a lot of shadim. And if not, which means that ena it's samuch l'shadim, emo mishum asufi. Why? Because if it's going to be very far away from the city, so there's no shadim. So for since she put him in a place where there's no chayot ra'ot and no shadim, so for obviously it's a siman that really be'emet, he's not a mamzer or whatever it is. Beknishta samichta lemata. If all of a sudden he's going to be found in a Bet Knesset, which is close to the city. Yeah. Ushchicha be Rabbi. And he's going to be common. What does that mean? A lot of people are found there. Embo mishum asufi. Yeah. Embo mishum asufi. There's no problem of asufi. Vimlav, and if not, yes, bo mishum asufi. But there is a problem of asufi. Okay, so Amar Amim comes and he says, "Hi pera du sufle," right? When it's going to be on a chafira, right? So yesh bo mishum asufi. There is a problem. Why? But basically they used to make like a ditch, like they used to make which is outside of the city. And again, there's mazikim there. Charifta de nahara. If it's going to be in the middle of a river, right? Embo mishum asufi. There's no asufi. Why? Because basically, since there's always a lot of boats that are going by, they're going to find him and he's not going to die, right? But there's always boats passing by. But if it's going to be beside the banks of the river, why? But since the boats don't go there, he would probably just die there. Right? If it's going to be on a place that basically boats don't always are not going by, and then that's it. Right? See, there's no problem with Sufi. Reshut Rabim, there is a Sufi. Why? Because if it's going to be in the middle of the Reshut Rabim, it's a sakana. So basically, the general rule is that any single time that she has mercy on him and that it's going to be in a safe place, so for obviously there's no problem with Sufi, but if not, there's a problem with Sufi. Amar Rava says, during the time of Ravon, embo mishum asufi, which means that many times if there was a hunger, there's no problem with a sufi. Why? Because that means there's a lot of people that are going through hunger, and it could be that they're, they basically just gave in just because they can't. Like, what do you want? There's nothing what they could do. Had Rava hai. So the Gemara asked this, what Rava just said. Which case are we going by? If you're going to tell me now that it's going under the Reshut Rabim, so I did the Shnera. What do you mean? If you're going to put them in the middle of the Reshut Rabim, imagine you put them in the middle of Harding. Cars are driving by. This, that. In the old days, it was also wild animals. It wasn't even cars. It's a sakana. So now what? Now there's no, what's it called? There's no thing. For sure, there's going to be a sufi. Ve'ela barado. My idea. So what are we talking about then? Shnei Rovo during the years of a famine. Even without the years of a famine. So he comes and he says, Ela ki itmar de Rava, but rather when was Rava speaking about? He says, Ahad Amar Yehuda Bar Rava, Amar Rabbi Abba Amar Yehuda Bar Zavdi Amar Rav, Rather, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Abba, right, said the name of Rabbi Yehuda, but the name of Rab. Kol zman bashuk. All the time that the sufi is called in the shuk, avivi imo ne'emanim alav. The parents are believed on him. Ne'asaf bin ashuk. But now, right, once he's collected from the shuk, en ne'emanim alav. They're not believed. Meaning, as long as he's still there where they left him, the parents are believed to say, this is our child. The second that he's gathered, that he's taken, that's it. Maitama, what's the reason? Rava says, because now he's called an Asufi. Meaning, before he was gathered, he's still not an Asufi. Once he was gathered, now he's called an Asufi. So Rava, and Rava comes in and says, even though he was Nesav in Ashuk, right? There, the parents are believed, even though he was Nesav in Ashuk. Why? Because since it's a years of famine and everybody is going through hunger, it could be that they were crying their eyes out and but they couldn't. They couldn't support the child. So they prefer that the child is supported by somebody that does have money or somebody that's able to give them support, but not to die in their hands because of the hunger. So therefore they put him in the middle of the shuk. So if he was going to be collected, he was going to be collected. Amar Rav Chasta, says Rav Chasta, Shlosha ne'emanim le'altar. There are three people that are going to be believed immediately. And these are the three people. An Asufi, right? Somebody that's going to be believed on a Sufi, a Chaya, which is a Mialevet, and Poteret et Chavrotea, right? Somebody that's going to be Poteret et Chavrotea from becoming Tameh b'tumat nida. And a Sufi was the case that we just mentioned. That means basically that we just said over here that a Tinok, on the Tinok, they're only going to be believed immediately. What do you mean immediately? Before they were gathered. Once they're gathered from the Shuk, they're not believed anymore. Chaya, a midwife. The Tanya, we learned in a Braita. This one came out first, this one came out second, so this is the Bechor, this is the second one. When these words, only if she didn't come out and back into the room. If she came out of the room and then came back, and a Ne'emenet anymore. She's not been Ne'emenet anymore. Who is the Bechor? He says, why? Because he says, since the Teomim, and usually they're Domim, so for she can't know anymore, because they could switch it very easily. Okay, here we're talking about a case of, let's say, for example, Teomim. Right? So he comes and he says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, if she has a chazakah that she's adayin omda bimkoma, right, which means she didn't turn around or whatever it is, that's what we're going to say, so then she's going to be believed. And if not, no. Says the Gemara, now what's the difference between them? The other she turned around. Meaning, according to one shita, the second that she turned around, even if she didn't go out of the room, it's already enough that now she cannot testify anymore. Why? Because once she turned around, 1 second, they moved here, which one was which? No, this one came out first. How do you know? They're twins, right? So how do you find out? Fine. That was the case of the Chaya. Next case, Poteret Chavrotea. What is the case exactly? The Tanam was went to the Mishnah. Shalosh nashim shayu shelo v'mitachat. There are 3 women that they were sleeping in the same bed. Now you have blood underneath one of them. Kulan tmeot. All of them are going to be tmeot. But if one of them checked immediately when said tmeah, and she found that she's tmeah, and the other ones are going to be torot. Rav Chassan says, but she checked herself immediately, which means that it had to be mamash. Miyad she checked herself. She can't check herself much later on. But yeah, obviously. So Taru Rabbanan, right, was saying if the others did check and they're pure, so what's the problem? Right, this one checked and she's tmeah.
So what's the problem with doing it later?
What?
So what's the problem with doing it later?
Because
2 hours later, there's still
because it could be that really be'emet, it only came down, not beforehand. One more time, right?
Okay,
But it's
That
maybe.
that could come later.
No,
But on Safek, I cannot be mitameh and I cannot be toleba and none of the other ones. Because maybe those other ones.
But only if it was now.
What?
If the other ones are teorot now, they were teorot this morning.
No. What are you talking about? A woman could have a discharge right now and it's dam nida, right? And it's a ketem, which is mitameh. And 2 hours later, she checks herself. She's completely pure.
Yeah,
What does that mean? It happens all the time. It's called a discharge. It's a discharge, so it's not approved. That's why it has to be miyad. It has to be immediately. That's what you have to do. So he says,
it's not because they were coming.
No, it's in the morning once they check immediately. Yeah. Once they find out, they check immediately. So he says over here, we learned to the Braita. Do you know that a chaya, a midwife, is believed to say this child is a kohen, this child is a levi, this child is a nativ, this child is a mamzer. When these words if there's no yirudim, that means like this: if nobody's going against it, for sure, right, you would be believed. right? Why? Why not? And that's what I was trying to tell Mordechai before. If there's no other set of parents, and two parents come and say, this is my child, right? So why wouldn't you believe them? Now again, the Sufi is a little bit different because once he was placed in the streets, now they don't have the nemanut anymore. But it's nobody ever goes against you. And you come and say, these are your children. So why wouldn't you believe? I'm saying, of course, right? So he says, what type of nirur? He says, we're going to tell me chad. Rabbi Yochanan says, you always need a nirur of two people. Today, obviously, we're talking about a nirur of two people. If you want, you could answer. Really, we're talking about irer chad. Rabbi Yochanan, when the Rabbi Yochanan says that there's no irur pachom mishnayim, hanamile echadika cheska kashut, only if there's a cheska kashut. But if there's no cheska kashut, so then chad nami meman. So even one person is going to be believed. Here, there's no cheska kashut because since he's like an asufi already, so there's no cheska kashut. So says the Gemara, ne'eman bal mekach lomar lazeh macharti lazeh macharti. You know the same thing happens. You're believed to say I sold it to him and not to him. But one of these words, if you still have it in your hands. But if you don't have it in your hands, you're not believed anymore. Right? To say which one did you actually come and did you sell it? Okay, so says the Gemara, okay, but who did he take the money from? So answers the Gemara, what are we talking about? He took the money from both of them. Right? He says one of them I accepted it midati and I wanted to sell it to him. The other one was balkurchi. And I don't remember which one. Meaning like this, right? Two people come to me and they wanted to buy the same product. So they take the same, they want to buy it. Okay, fine. They both bought it for me. But the problem is that when they both bought it, right, what happened is that they both gave me the money. One of them forced me in the sale. And one of them I accepted it because I wanted to give him the sale. Now I forgot which one's which. So I've got money from both of them, and I don't have it anymore in my hand, the mekach. So now I'm not believed to say this one yes and this one no, or this one no and this one yes, because that's it. I don't remember which, so that's it. So I can't do anything. I'm not believed in. Okay? That's what the Gemara says until